Welcome to the first demo for painting number 2. So this is the Post-Impressionist self-portrait. And the first step of doing a self-portrait is taking a picture of yourself or finding a picture of yourself. Now, ideally in a self-portrait, you're using a mirror and you can look at a mirror, but that makes it a lot trickier. So if that's a part that you want to really challenge yourself, set up in a bathroom or find one of the mirrors in the classroom and use that for your self-portrait. But if not, take a picture. So there's a couple things going on. I printed off both of these. These are actually both good options for me. And I'll talk about what makes them a good painting picture. So the first thing that I'm looking at is that I've got relatively soft lighting, like there's no giant shadows, like really dark shadows, and no really like bright areas of like pure white on my face. But even though it's soft lighting, there's still directional lighting. So you'll notice on both of these that this side of my face is brighter than this side of my face. Excuse me. This side of my face is brighter than this side of my face. And having one side lighter and one side darker actually helps you to create the form of the face and make it look three-dimensional as opposed to making it feel really flat, which is going to be an important part of this painting. So try to find an area where it's not like super crazy strong light, but you also get kind of one side of your head is a little bit lighter and one side of your head is a little bit darker. That's really good. The other thing that I'm looking at, in both of these pictures, so number one, like not having harsh light means that like I don't wash out the colors. We're gonna really push the colors in this project, just like the Post-Impressionists did. Color is really important. And so having a picture that does bring out the different colors of your face, and in both of these I've actually edited these to emphasize the color, and you can see they were taken in different settings. This is the portrait setting, this is standard photo setting. And the background colors are different, so that affects how the camera interprets the colors on my face. But I'm actually like a little bit less worried about that. So either of these in terms of color, as long as there is some color, so I can see like, okay, there's some red, there's some purple, there's actually like a little bit of green down here, and over here like there's some oranges and some browns. So again, they have slightly different colors, but as long as there's some color that I can take and run with, that's going to be really good for this project. The one thing that's slightly different about both of these is that in this one my head is tilted, which actually makes it really hard to do. If you're not familiar with painting faces, this will be the easier photo to paint. So I'm going to use this as my demo, even though I think this one is a nicer photo of me. Again, you're not looking to create a photo that's actually a good photo. So neither of these, like, I'm really going to put on Instagram. And in fact, like, if it's a photo that you're like, yeah, I want this on Instagram, it probably is going to make a bad painting photo. So I'm going to just do the more standard one. In terms of hats and necklaces and things like that, you'll notice that my crop just really emphasizes the face. So I've cropped out like just a bit of the shoulders, and then I've really like filled up this space with my face. I like this fun little turtleneck thing. It provides some variation in clothing, but it's not too complicated. So that's a fun part of this for me. If you've got an important piece of jewelry that you want to put in there, great. For those of you who want to wear a hat, you can, but just watch how the hat casts a shadow on your face, because we don't want your eyes in the shadow. So you're going to have to play around with the lighting a little bit more, or take a hat off. If you've got like a beanie or something like that, doesn't have a bill on it, then that's fine. And I'll talk in class a little bit about like what makes a good photo and what doesn't make a good photo. But for now, what I'm going to do is I need to take this and I need to sketch it onto my piece of paper. And I'm not going to sketch everything. I'm going to sketch just enough landmarks, you know, head shape, mouth, nose, eyes, things like that. So I'm going to demo 2 different ways of sketching. The first one is a looser way using paint. So if you're a little more confident, this is the way that the post-impressionists probably would have done it. If you're less confident, the second way shows you kind of it's an easier way to make sure that your face actually looks like your face. So it's a gridding technique that's a common drawing technique. So to do the painted sketch, I need all my paint stuff. So a thinner brush, because I don't need thick lines. But then also what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use a bright contrasty color. So I've chosen blue. Some other really fun ones are a bright red or bright purple or even green. Things that don't feel like normal skin tones or are part of skin tones but kind of made extreme or are contrast to skin tones. And it's gonna make it really fun when there's these peekaboo moments of these bright colors coming through around the edges. So I'm gonna start just by grabbing some of this, and I don't want it to be too chunky, although we are gonna get thicker. The method of painting for this one is called direct painting, so it's different than the layering that we did for the other one. And I'm just gonna start by making some dots in some important areas. So like the top of the head, where that lands, where the chin lands, maybe where where my shoulders land. And I'm gonna kind of put some dots in areas, and then I'm just gonna start connecting the dots. So the top of my head feels about like this close to the top. My chin feels like it's up here, and then the shirt feels like it's halfway down. And then my shoulders are just slightly below the chin. The side of my head has some space over here, and this is the side of my hair. This has a little bit more space over here. And then, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start my hairline is maybe right there, and I kind of have an egg. Everyone has a little bit of an egg for a face, so I'm gonna draw that egg in just a little bit, and then I'll refine it. So that hair is kind of coming down here, and then my chin kind of comes in like this. I didn't add any medium to this, but it might have been helpful to add a little bit of retarder just to kind of spread it out a little bit, but I'm gonna use some water. If I make some mistakes, it's okay, because I'll be painting. So this kind of comes out, my hair comes in, so it goes up and over. All right, so I'm gonna keep working on the outside, and then I'll come back into the features. Okay, so I've got kind of the outside of my face and my hair. In some of these areas where the hair, so my hair is curly, which means it doesn't have like always have a definitive edge, or sometimes you can see the background through it, or down here it's kind of hard to figure out what's going on. So it's okay if I sort of keep it loose and ambiguous for now. I'll be able to like figure that out as I paint later on. You know, some of the hair kind of comes overlaps, and that's fine. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start putting the eyes and the nose in. And again, I start with dots, make sure they're in the right place, and then I build from there. And if you want to draw some lines in, so some standard things to think about, since my head is straight on, if I drew a line down the middle, everything should align to that line well. If I have my head tilted or tilted like this or shifted to the left or the right, that line changes and it actually becomes a curved line, because again, our heads are kind of like eggs. And so again, straight on kind of makes it easiest for me to make sure that the sides balance but just notice if you have your head tilted or shifted. The eyes are actually from the top of the head to the bottom of the chin. The eyes run about halfway. So I want to look at this and kind of identify that halfway point, and that's where the eyes are gonna align. And so sometimes you'll see a cross. People actually draw in that cross, so that helps them get things in the right place. But if I look at from the edge of my head, heads are usually 5 eyes wide. So you've got like an eye in the middle, an eye, and then an eye on each side. So I'm gonna kind of do, and then just identifying like, okay, it's closer to the hair over here and farther from the hair over here. Does that look about right? And then again, the nose is about halfway down. I think we focus on this part of the face, so we have a tendency to scooch everything up and make it bigger. But you got a lot of forehead there, and don't short yourself the forehead, otherwise it'll look like you are lacking in brain, which is sadness. So I'm gonna do just kind of the bottom of the nose, and then the mouth, which is around halfway, but for me, like scooches up closer towards my nose. And the most important line in your mouth is not the top of the lip or the bottom of the lip, but it's that line in between where your lips meet. That's the line that becomes the most important. Okay, so so now I've got kind of my landmark locations, and I'm gonna work on drawing edges and lines that I see. With my nose, I see a line right here, which can be helpful, or I can just do the bottom. But don't draw in that triangle, because there's not, if you notice, the nose doesn't actually have edges. It just has areas where we kind of move from light to dark to lit, or medium to light to dark. So you can draw in some of those edges, but don't emphasize that triangle nature of your nose. If you notice, my eyes are like slightly tilted, that middle corner is slightly lower than the bottom corner, so I'm going to push that, the outside corner. So I'm going to push that, and the top curve is usually much curvier than the bottom. Eyes are sort of almond shaped. This is not perfect, but I can keep adjusting it as I paint. If I draw a line down from the inside of my eye, that's usually about where my nostrils are. What's tricky is that we've got kind of the line where the nose sticks out and then below it too, so we see a little bit of that bottom of the nose. So there's a couple different lines going on here. Draw in whatever's helpful for you, but know what you're drawing. And then my mouth, that line, it actually is more flat and then just curves a little bit. Here, I'm going to get rid of my creepy eyes. So when we look at the iris, which is the big round part, the pupil is the black part, we see the full bottom of that circle. It just sits right on that lower lid, but the top gets cut off just a little bit by the top, the upper lid. And the space in between, basically wherever your eyes are looking, like this space should match this space and this space should match this space. The bottom of tip of my lip. My chin. I might need to give myself a little more chin down here. Got a good sized chin. Take advantage of it. My cheek comes in a little bit more over here. I think this eye needs kind of will come out, and you can like play with the shadows under your eyes, but you don't need to like really emphasize them. So I haven't done all the details, but I've got enough landmarks now that I can start painting, which is what I want. So that I would say is a pretty good sketch to start with. Okay, so now I'm going to teach you how to use the grid system to transfer from one photo to another piece of paper. And we're also going to use it to enlarge. So if you think about it, your canvas is 16 by 20 and a normal size piece of paper is 8.5 by 11. So if you double it from this paper to this paper, you'll come close. You may have a little bit extra that maybe on the side or the bottom that you have to cut off, but it shouldn't be too much of a problem. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna grid this photo in 1-inch squares. And I do that just by making 1-inch hash marks across the top, 1-inch hash marks on both sides, across the side, and then just drawing the grid in. I'm gonna use a red pen because it kind of stands out nicely. A blue pen would also work, a pencil or any kind of pen would work fine. I just like to use red during these. So once I have my hash marks, that makes it easier to draw straight lines. And double check, like if for some reason your lines are angled, you wanna look at that and find that out before you draw them in, because otherwise your drawing will end up being super wonky. I've got a 1-inch grid here, and now I'm gonna do a bigger grid here. With your 16 by 20 canvas, you should do a 2-inch grid. I have a slightly smaller piece of paper, so I'm gonna do a 1.5-inch grid, just in case you're wondering as you look. But you should be doing a 2-inch grid. I'm doing the painting one with pencil, both the grid and the drawing, just because it gives me a little more flexibility to erase. You can do it with pen. Having a strong grid, ultimately we want to get rid of the grid, so we don't want to see the grid, and maybe that's where a lighter pencil line is nicer. But also we're going to be putting some heavy layers over this, so we're going to be painting over everything. With the grid transfer, we're gonna go like box by box essentially, and it can be confusing when you're in the middle where the boxes are. So I like to letter and number them so I can be like, oh, I'm in box D5, if I'm ever wondering. So I'm gonna, on both of these, I'm gonna letter across the top and number down. You'll notice that 11 and this half box are just not going to make it on there. There's a slight difference between the sizes and the ratios, and that's totally okay because none of those are very important for what I'm doing. So now I'm just going to go box by box and start looking. So C, I kind of have a curve that goes across the bottom. I notice where it comes up, D, and then E, it comes in. So I'm just going to keep going like this. Okay, let's compare the two. This one is definitely more detailed and more accurate. Although what can happen is that by going box by box, you kind of lose a sense of the whole. So I feel like I've made my chin a little bit more square than I do have a square chin, but a little bit more square than it is in reality. So after you do a grid drawing, if you do that, you do kind of want to step back and look at the whole, like, do the eyes look like they're about the same size? Are they looking in the same direction? Do things kind of fit into the whole? So that's something you want to look at. This also takes a lot more time and effort to do it this way, but it does give me a more solid, like, this is how it looks. This is how I look, right? Like, this is much more accurate than this one. However, there's a kind of a looseness and a liveliness to this one, and it is close enough that I can really start to play with it, and I get more of that, like, the actual frame of the picture in this one. So I might try playing with this one and see if I can kind of fix it to make it all make sense. If it doesn't look perfectly like me, you know, it's really, really hard to make a portrait and even harder to do a self-portrait. So I'm okay with that. Because with the painting, we're gonna kind of paint in a looser style. So I think I'm gonna try doing this one. But again, this can give you a start that's more accurate and can make you feel more confident about what you're doing. If you're feeling like, this is really hard to do, this is a good way to start.